Hey guys, Cole here. Welcome back to another video. So if you've seen my other video that I posted today about the actual changes coming into Forus and Angar, you can go and have a look at it. It's only like 1 minute long because obviously Plarium didn't put so much effort into giving us information such as maybe boost in multipliers. To be honest, they've never given that, but at least they could have done a little bit more effort to just say something more about the differences in the champions, rather than just giving us a plain text where damage has increased and that's it basically. So let me give you my actual thoughts on actual patch notes that a rebalancing should have in a game as big as Raid Shadow Legends, with like 1 billion in revenue, and that is data from not last summer but the summer before that. So I'm guessing by now they might have even made a billion and a half, right? Still a lot of money. With all that money, you definitely should have a team where you are pushing out patches every single month for rebalancing. When a game like this one has about 800 or so champions, my mind is like, okay, we're gonna have a rebalancing team, we're gonna have a content team, we're gonna have social media team, we're gonna have a developer team who looks on the back end, you know, how the skills work, how everything works. We're gonna have a team focused on the content creators, which they do have like so far. So they're gonna have like 10 different teams. To me right now, it looks like it's a small team that, okay, guys, you got to do this. And then once you're done, you got to go and do this. And once you're done, you got to go and do this. Because what they say that their focus has shifted since last May, when the last rebalancing came through, was that their focus shifted and they stopped rebalancing. When you have 800 champions, you cannot stop rebalancing champions. These are not champions that are long gone and not accessible anymore, where rebalancing doesn't make sense anymore. These champions you can still get. There's a lot of champions you can still get. Only like a handful is actually restricted through things such as the ninja promotion, the Rondo promotion, and all that. Only a handful you cannot get anymore. Literally, you cannot get them anymore. So and usually all of those are actually good and don't even need a rebalancing. So there's so many different champions in the game right now that could use a rebalancing and different patch notes. But I will give you guys some examples on how I would change, like Forus today, where they pushed out the Forus rebalancing patch notes, where simply they stated damage boost to his astral terrors. This is inherently bad, right? You're giving us what information? Just damage boost. Okay, sure. The multiplier changes to the better. Is that the real reason where Forus is bad? Should something more be provided? I would say yes, damage boost, but then just add some text where you're saying, okay, damage has been changed to be approximately 1.3 times the damage that he is currently doing, 1.5 times the damage. So a boost in his multiplier by like 50%. What they could have also done with Forus, in my opinion, where his kit is basically useless in content where you're fighting bosses on a champion who's so unique, such as this one, where you're doing damage based on fears. You're basically locked out from content where you cannot fear the bosses. What they could have added, which would be very simple, on a champion that has double AoE attacks and just gains damage, especially on this skill, based on fears, they could have added here that his damage is boosted also when an enemy applies fear to your own team. And then they could have stated maybe your damage boosted by that can only be boosted by, let's say, 200%. And that will be making Forus so useful for the Hydra, especially against the head of Torment, where that head fears your allies. Then that would be boosting your own damage through Forus, and eventually be able to do very, very strong damage, which would not be locked out on the enemy max HP limitation that we have on the head. So if you don't know what I mean, is that if you have a hero or a champion such as Acrisia, your damage is locked out by 10% of the maximum boss's health. That's why Chanda becomes so good and can do insane amounts of damage, because she's not locked out on that. Her damage is just AoE. And that would have made Forus significantly better for boss content such as the Hydra, where the bosses will fear you. And you can also use him in other content where the enemies fear you. A good example would be just simply Arena, where you are getting feared by the one and only Taraz. When you go into the arena, you have Taraz, who immediately applies fear to some of your champions. So when the enemies apply fear to you, you get a damage boost, not strictly when you are applying fears on enemies. So With this way, Fortus avoid damage dealer on the same level of Yorgit. They are standing next to each other, but there's no chance that this damage boost is even equal to the damage boost of, well, the damage that Yorgit can do. So one significant, buff would be there, and then maybe they could have done something else to his remaining kit, where they could have just completely removed the requirement for accuracy for this dude. So the debuff cannot be resisted by targets under fear, so you gotta apply fear first in order for the true fear to be applied. In my opinion, he should have done this without the requirement of accuracy. That would have allowed him to be such a significant threat to the enemies without the need for accuracy. He's a void champion. Again, he's a void champion. So same thing with this one. Increases your chance of enemy skills failing by 15% when those enemies are under fear or true fear debuffs. This could have been boosted maybe a little bit more to make him a true fear to your enemies, but maybe that would have been a bit too much in the sense of just not allowing enemies, locking out enemies without actually locking them out. But this would also make him a target for polymorph. So you get something and you lose something. And also, again, not requiring accuracy. That is a big thing with damage dealers. You shouldn't be requiring accuracy the same way that Harima works, okay? This debuff cannot be blocked or resisted when the champion is from the demon spawn. That is insane. It's only one faction out of 15, but we know which factions they mean, which champions they mean, because demon spawn has some of the strongest PvP champions, okay? Duchess, Mortu, Prince Kaimar, these three immediately lost value just because of Harima. Well, maybe not lost value, but became a little bit weaker against that specific matchup. So next up is going to be Angar, which I again find a little bit interesting in all content except for content where provoke would bring in negative consequences to you, which is basically PvP content. But I never found Angar to be the real problem here. I think Angar is a strong champion in the sense of just locking out enemies. His damage is great because he basically forces the provoke and has just insane provoke continuity when he applies it all the time. So his buff is actually a solid one. I would say it's okay to be applying provoke for even 2 turns. I find that very useful in many situations. You're just destroying enemies when you do manage to apply it. But again, the real problem with the game is on polymorph, which will be addressed in the future, so it shouldn't be included in patch notes, I would say, for rebalancing. But we should always have that in mind when we're seeing champions, that polymorph will be changed in the future. So that's these 2 champions and what I would change personally to make them better in my own patch notes, okay? But what I would love to see is at least start including some epics into the rebalancing. Do rebalancing of 2 legendaries, do 2 epics per month. The rebalancing of epics does not have to be significant to make them extremely good. They need to have some small change to make them make sense, especially the epics that are outdated a little bit. And I'm not sure which example I could give, but I would start out maybe with the daily login champions that we all get when we start out. That will also help out players who are starting out just now. And I know that might affect Plarium's bottom line, where they lose some money, but come on, Yaga, the Insatiable, and Dark Aethel being a 60-day and 90-day reward, they are, I would say, the most underwhelming out of all the rewards here. Even Lordly Legionary has some value for the Fire Knight, but these 2, not so much. I'll give you guys a good example of Dark Aethel, okay? Dark Aethel, if you've never seen her kit, then this is the time we'll go through it together. What faction? I think it's Undead Hordes is Dark Aethel, right? Yeah, there she is. Just have a look at this kit and how specific this kit is. Attacks all enemies. Places a 30% increased speed buff on this champion for 3 turns if this attack kills 4 or more enemies. You need to apply, if you want to apply the increased speed buff on this enemy only, you gotta kill 4 enemies. You gotta wipe up the board for most situations in campaign. For dungeons, it's basically 80% of the enemies, and then heals this champion by 50% if it kills 6 or more enemies. This never happens in any other area than the spider, where again beating the spider with Dark Aethel, I mean, yeah, it's possible, but look at that. Grants an extra turn if this attack kills 10 or more enemies. I mean, come on, this is insane to do. And if you get that extra turn, what do you get? Another AoE, which isn't that strong. This should have been way less of a requirement. This should have been maybe grant an extra turn if you kill 4 enemies. The increase speed should have been 1 enemy. The heal should have been maybe 2 or 3 enemies at most. And then the extra turn again should have been maybe 1 enemy, 2 enemies, and 3 enemies. This is not an insane kit to have on your big AoE. Okay, and killing 3 enemies is insane. Especially, think about PvP. Just killing 3 enemies, you won the PvP fight, the classic arena fight. So you gotta go back and see all these epics that definitely need your attention. And these are not crazy buffs to do. This shouldn't take you months upon months in the making to go through and make a patch that changes things. And Yaga is another good example where he is a poisoner that comes in a little bit too late to help out players, right? He can apply a poison, but it's 50% chance for 1 poison. We have uncommons that are still in the game that do more poisons, 5% ones with you know, better frequency. You can get extra turns and just apply a lot more enemies. He has a skill here which requires 6 skill books here to attack one enemy 2 times with a 75% chance to apply the poison. Not even 100% chance with a double hit. Again, we have better epics at this. And then this one attacks one enemy just simply like that. So 5 books, 6, that's 11. Then another 4, that's 15 books on a champion that is underwhelming would be a compliment for Yaga, okay? So I've just given you guys, Plarium, you know, champions to have a look at. What I would change on Yaga as an example I would have simply made him apply more poisons. This should be a double hitting attack at least. I'm not even gonna say triple hitting because that might affect, you know, Fire Knight and making good for Fire Knight. You don't want him to be good in 2 places at once, right? So make him apply 2 poisons here, make him apply 3 poisons here, make this 100% chance when you book it out, reduce the books by 5. This champion needs to be an 11 book champion, not a 16 book champion. And this needs to have a lower cooldown with 3 turns cooldown. And the damage needs to be boosted significantly to justify this being like a burst skill. Since this is a poisoner, not a damage dealer / poisoner, okay? So you wouldn't really go heavy on damage with this guy because he's, you know, squishy and would just straight up die. So that's immediately 2 champions who are so much below the usefulness of what you will see from daily login. And I would say, you know, High Katoon is a fantastic champion that has clear utility and which you can find in many situations, and every single one of her skills is useful, which you cannot say the same for Yaga. Dark Aethel, Dark Alhain is good, Lordly Legionary is okay, Syl is fantastic, Tanix is useful for Faction Wars, Grush is very good, and then we have Visix, who is also very good. So you have already there 2 good candidates for epics, and then there's just so many. Every single faction, there's 15 factions, there's 12 months in the year. You should be addressing every single faction, maybe more than 1 faction every month if you want to make this make sense for a 12-month period, and just be attacking that every month. We're gonna go Banner Lords next month. We're gonna go you know, High Elves and Sacred Order. Do two of them and do 8 champions in a row. Make some of these champions make some more sense. Champions such as Missionary, even Relic Keeper needs some love. He is very, very much so a 2018 champion where he just gets an extra turn if you kill the enemy, and this just gives him an increased attack. This aura is very unique. Campaign attack by 40%. Make this a little bit stronger for him to have some usefulness and reasoning behind actually completing the fusion and using this champion, because currently there's no such thing. Make him at least have some use for maybe Faction Wars, so that the fusing of this guy for the Arbiter missions doesn't feel like a complete waste of resources. And that is just some of the ideas I have for actual patch notes, or actual rebalancing that should be coming into the game. Should I be a developer? Well, no, because I mean, I know of course these might not be the best options to do that, but of course I have some insight behind how to make some of these things better and how to make the game a little bit better for all players out there. Changes to Yaga and to, you know, and to Dark Aethel would affect 0 of the end game, late game, mid game player base, but would definitely bring a smile to the new players out there who are just starting out and they see, okay, Yaga, I'll be getting him in 10 days and he's getting buffed. Yes, you want that. You want that to be your new players experience, okay? You want that to be said by the players who are currently following you playing. So anyway, guys, these are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.